You are absolutely welcome to ask me questions, ask me anything you want, really, and I'll answer it as best you can, either by putting your hand up and unmuting yourself or by writing it in the chat. Hi, Ros. I'm going to read your question out, Ros. I'm Ros Holland from Boaz in Manchester. I'm moonlighting here today in place of my colleague who looks after our major donor work. Hello. And your chief exec. So wonderful. Thank you very much for a chief exec joining us talking about major donor fundraising. Really excited to have you here. Thank you. I think that's a real, I hope your major donor fundraiser knows, and I'm sure they do. This is a real endorsement of major gift fundraising, but you're all welcome to say anything, and I'm here to answer your questions, really. So get started. Does anyone want to be first? Hi, Havens Hospices, unmute yourself. Welcome, come and ask your question.
Hiya.
Hi.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we're starting to look at our mid donors, so not quite our major donors, but we're looking at mid donors that give maybe between 500 to 5,000 a year. And we're starting to look at them a bit differently and treating them differently. Has anyone had any experience of that and how they would steward them maybe a bit differently to major donors?
So do you have a major donor program?
Not a program as such, but we do have a way of working with them.
And what's your individual giving program like? I imagine that's quite well established.
Yeah, that is well established. Yeah. We're just working on our major donor program as well, really, giving it the whole thing a bit of a review because we had a capital appeal campaign.
Yeah.
We moved to a new building 3 weeks before COVID lockdown. So what we're seeing on our major donor, we've just done a prospecting for gold exercise, and what we've identified, there's quite a lot of mid-level givers and on the outcome of that exercise. Our major donors are the people we expected to see there,
Okay,
and quite not many of them, which we sort of expected. And really, we'd been concentrating on the capital appeal with them. So we are looking at how we take them forward and looking at what we've got coming up. But yeah, it's highlighted there's quite a lot of mid-level donors. And we just wondered how other people, what sort of program they've got in place for that.
And are they currently giving? Are they currently in your IG
Some
program?
are and some not.
Mixture, yeah.
Mixture.
Okay.
Or they
So
maybe have gave quite a long time ago.
Okay, fair enough. So I think, and I think there's two ways, you can go with this either way. My view is that individual giving is probably better off running a mid-value program because it is a personalized individual giving program, not a mass major gift program. So where I'm seeing it working really well in terms of mid-value is it sits in the IG team and they have access to your prospecting for gold data, so they can flag those people as appropriate. The ones who are currently giving, they can then test some uplift appeals with them and see if they can upgrade their gifts, but upgrade them quite significantly, so they could upgrade them from whatever it is to hundreds and work on them that way. They can then use all of the tools at their disposal that IG teams have that we don't have in major giving, you know, all the automations and the databases and the segmentation, to make sure that they are still really well communicated with in the way that they are expecting, but with a different ask within that communication. I worked with a client last year, and one of the mistakes they were making was they were pulling their mid-value givers out of the IG program. And the feedback we got from those people was, well, we used to hear from you like 4 to 6 times a year, and it was lovely. And we'd get, you know, it was photos of cores and updates on impact and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly we only get one phone call a year and we feel like, what have we done wrong? So you need to be really careful of that if they're currently receiving communications from you, whether they're current or lapsed donors. If they're lapsed mid-value, then your IG team may well have been trying to reignite that anyway, and may well have already been trying to get regular gifts from them. So my personal view is that mid-value sits there, and it just I hope there are no IG people here, because I don't mean to sound quite as rude as this is, just increases their target, really. That's what I'm going to say. And then the really important thing is that your two teams work really well together where those edges blur. So you will have major donors who choose to not give at a major value anymore, but could become regular high-end mid-value donors. And you need to make sure, and that's really personal. I think, you know, you kind of work with your team on a case-by-case basis, and you get your first dozen set over a long period of time before you set up any automations and standard processes for that, because it will be dependent on each donor. Sorry, that probably isn't what you wanted to hear. You should. And you know, if anyone here is doing mid-value as part of their major gift program and says, no, totally not, do it my way, do feel free to come in and correct me. That's just where I'm seeing it working really well with our clients. And what we're doing at the moment with our clients is really harnessing the power of a great IG team, which is around data and automations and systems and processes and mass communication, and making sure that they just create one more segment with it.
What sort of criteria do you look at mid-value? What level of giving?
Oh God, it totally depends on the charity. There are people who are looking at, so you're basing it on the wealth of the person, aren't you?
Bit of a mixture,
yeah.
but we're looking at giving as well.
We're looking at their giving history, and there are people on there who have never given as well.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a test.
Yeah.
But
so if they've never given, you must be basing that on the prospecting for gold wealth data.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what are you basing the kind of giving criteria on? Is it a percentage of their overall wealth?
Well, we're sort of exploring it at the moment, really. Yeah, it will be. Yeah.
So I kind of think it's a different calculation for a regular gift than it is for a capital appeal one-off gift. So if you're looking for a capital appeal one-off gift, you're considering that person's making like a single impact for a significant thing. You're not expecting them to do that over and over and over and over again. And you might take quite a large percentage of their overall wealth. You might take as much as 1% of their overall wealth. That's your calculation for what is a gift. Whereas for a regular gift, because you expect them to do it, let's take the annualized version, you expect them to do it every year, you can't take that bigger percentage, so you dial it down even for the major givers. It also, for both big gifts and mid-value gifts, depends how much difference you can prove they're going to make. If the mid-value program will be much more sort of funding business as usual for you guys, you're Havens is hospice, so you will always need the lights on, you will always need the nurses paid. There's no way you can kind of cure the need for a hospice. Whereas in other organizations where they're working towards a cure or working towards the end of a thing, it's harder to get business as usual gifts. So it does depend on the cause area slightly, but you guys, have compelling reasons why you need business as usual. You need your nurses funding, you need your gas bills paid, your electric bills paid, and all that stuff. And you need to bundle it so that the donor, I don't need to teach you this, but you need to bundle it so the donor knows they're buying a tangible thing. But those regular ongoing commitments are going to be smaller than they would have been. So if someone's given you £500,000 for the capital appeal, hopefully they would consider a regular gift of I don't know, say 10% of that, so say 50 grand they might consider as a regular annual contribution. It would be my kind of broad rule of thumb, but it totally depends on the individual as well, and it's more about it's just that's about conversations. So the client I'm working with at the moment has 500 to 5,000 in their mid-value program, but that's annual giving. So anything under £500 per year is going into the individual gift program.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a lot. But that's where they felt comfortable in terms of, and I would recommend you kind of make the cutoff according to your resources as much as anything else. So to begin with, if you're kind of drawing people up from a regular giving program, it kind of depends what your average annual giving already is for those people. So let's say they're already being super generous and giving you £10 a month. So they're giving 120. If you suddenly got them to giving £200 a year, that's actually a big uplift, right? So maybe your major gift program in its earliest days starts at a percentage above what they're currently giving, and your IG team, once you give them the file, will instantly be able to do that analysis of, well, these people are giving between 60 and 120 a year, so let's do an IG program that looks to uplift them to double their giving. And then over time you will expand it at the other end. And like I say, you will feed down into it, whether you've got big givers and they're major donors, but they're just never going to give at that level again. And you might think, well, they're probably going to give us £5 a year, right? So can we have the top end of our mid-value program at £5 and I'll hand them over to you guys? Because it's a resource thing, right? You can't, it's probably just the two of you, and you've probably got plenty of donors to be chatting to. And if you don't have the capacity to deal with the ones who can give you big gifts well, then you won't get any big gifts. So you've got to kind of cut it off somewhere. But I know other organizations that cut off their mid to high value at 10 grand, others at 25. It totally depends on the resourcing of the organization and the choices they're making.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're really welcome. You're really welcome. Who's next? Who else would like to ask a question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Hi. So one of the things that I've been asked to do by St. Luke's, or to look into, is setting up either a sort of a patrons program, an ambassadors program, that sort of thing, whereby people or donors make a commitment to donate 3, 5, 10,000 pounds every year for 3 years. And I just wondered whether any of you have had any experience in setting up or are involved in anything like that, because it's quite new to us here and very new to me.
Is it what your donors have asked for?
No, it's what our CEO has asked us to look at.
Okay, so it should be led by your donors. You shouldn't be trying to strong arm your donors into a tidy thing that your CEO saw at another charity and thought, well, that looks easy, I'll do that. Patrons programs, ambassadors programs are not easy. There is a complete misunderstanding that if you set up a program and they give this every year for 3 years, it's a piece of pie and it's the easiest way to make major donor fundraising work, and it's absolutely categorically not true. Patrons programs can lead to donors giving too little. Because it's a set amount of money. So why would they bother giving more? It's really hard to then upgrade them out of that. So if you end up with a multimillionaire giving you 10 grand a year for 3 years, you're going to kick yourself when you realize that they're a multimillionaire and they could be giving multiples of that with zeros on the end. I would push back quite. I do whenever our clients come to us with this. I push back really hard on it. I think every aspect of your major gift program has to be set up to service the donors you actually have. You can only find out what they want by having conversations with them and saying, how would you like to give? What's your giving like in other organizations? What's great about giving in those other places? What are they doing well that we could emulate? What are the mistakes they're making that we should avoid for you? And if they say, do you know, I'm part of a circle, I'm part of a club, then you don't just take that at face value. You go, so what do you get out of that club? Who are the other people? What's it about for you? There's a hospice we worked with donkeys years ago who did set up a giving circle, and it was around one specific donor. I'm going to remember it really badly because it's on the very edge of my memory, this. He was already a really prolific donor, and he was like sponsoring his mates in the marathon, and he was buying tables at their ball, and he was doing all the auction prizes, you know, all that kind of, when you look at someone holistically, even though it doesn't sit in your budget, he was already a really generous giver. Major donor fundraiser got involved, chatting away, and it was a local charity, so like a hospice, might even have been a hospice. He really wanted to meet like-minded philanthropic types and was coming to those balls for that, but found, and this is definitely putting words in his mouth, I'm misremembering my interview with him, but found that the type of people who come and splash money at balls were maybe a bit outgoing for him. And he was looking for someone who was maybe a bit more modest, but still philanthropic. And as it happened, she knew 2 or 3 other people on her books who weren't coming to the balls for the exact same reason. They were feeling a bit like they had to show off and they really didn't want to. And she was able to create quite an informal get together to begin with to try and sound it out. And they turned it into a giving circle. So they then got their mates involved in it. And I think that's where giving circles do work, is if you have someone who really wants to set one up or wants to have a thing, and you get a couple of founder members in, but their job is to bring their mates in.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, you've got to find the right people. How many of us feel totally comfortable asking our mates for sponsorship even when we run marathons and stuff? Like, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? Even us who do it for a job, it can be a bit like, not sure about that really. You know, had to ask my family to sponsor my son to bounce on a bouncy castle, and I felt embarrassed because I was like, it doesn't feel like the kind of thing you should be sponsored to do. He just loves that, but it was for his school and he's 5 and all this. So So I, being a fundraiser, focused on the difference the money would make to the school in relation to their grandchild. But, you know, it does feel a bit awkward, squad, doesn't it? So it takes a certain type of person to want to draw others in. So I would caution it, and I'd push back against it. And
Yeah.
I'd spend my time speaking to the people you know and asking them what would get them supporting. Did you say St Luke's? Supporting St Luke's more deeply. What do they want to hear about? What do they want to know about? What are the mechanisms? None of these people are giving in isolation to your charity, or maybe 1% are. They're giving elsewhere. They're having an experience elsewhere. What's working for them there?
Yeah. Perfect.
Sorry, probably not the answer you wanted.
No. It's your answer, and your thoughts absolutely don't surprise me, because where I've spoken to other major donor fundraisers, for want of a better expression, there's a little group of us locally, about 5 of us, and I said to them, you know, what have you done? And one of them put, sometimes I question whether the hard work is worth it, which I thought was quite telling. So so it doesn't surprise me that you've said what you said, Beth. But thank you very much.
You're really welcome. Sue, hello.
Hi, Beth. Hi, good to see you. And thank you for today, because it's always really helpful to kind of network and be with other like-minded people. So I really appreciate you putting it on. I guess my question, and I'd really kind of welcome a conversation around KPIs. So we are just in the process of re-establishing our major donor program, having been dormant for quite a while. And I'm very mindful that it's a slow burn and it will take time. There's no sort of quick instant results. And I think my board are very supportive of that and understand it. But I'm now at that stage where, okay, how do we move the needle, and how do we demonstrate that we're kind of moving forwards and making change? So when I look at KPIs, is it better to kind of focus on things like the number of meetings, the number of conversations or interactions, or I'd really just sort of welcome your thoughts on probably what those KPIs might look like, as opposed to being financially targeted. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. And it's a really good question, Sue. Thank you. Because I think it's really hard for us to demonstrate progress. It is a slow burn for everyone, right? So I think there's two slightly different answers. There's the KPIs that you should be demonstrating out of your team, and KPIs that you might give to team members if you're lucky enough to have any. So okay, I'll just say that.
My team members on here, so you might have to be careful what you say.
No, it's absolutely fine. I just think that the way we hold ourselves to account internally can be things like number of meetings and things like that. But when we think about what that looks like externally, is it giving a fair view?
Absolutely.
Because we all know that we can have umpteen meetings with one person and it hasn't moved the needle forward, and we can have one meeting with another person and we've gone forward 3 steps, right? So I'm an advocate of looking, whether you use moves management or something else, but having your stages, right? And your basic stages are, you've identified a person, you've qualified them, you've made your first approach, you're in cultivation. That's a huge long one. You know, you're ready to ask, you've asked, you've got your response, they're in stewardship, you know. So broadly, that's where I would go. Obviously, thanking should be one of those words. But anyway, you get the idea. And I think it can be more helpful for a trustee board and senior management team to understand, kind of, number one, that your whole portfolio isn't going to be asked in any one year ever. Okay. You know, you could kind of split that into thirds, couldn't you? You've got the third that are being stewarded because they gave last year. In an ideal world, the third that's ready to be asked this year, and the third that you're cultivating ready to ask next year, broadly. Yeah. And you might split that into quarters because you're earlier on. Yeah. But so that's one really useful measure, is you can say, this is where we started and everyone was at the identification stage. As the year has gone on, we've moved them into these 4 different phases, or these 3 different phases. So we've got, these people are the new ones who are coming in, who's feeding the pipeline. These are the ones who are in cultivation. These are the ones who are getting ready to be asked. So you can show progress over time. If you monitor that over time, you can show the change and the spread across that. That can be really helpful. When your program is up and running, I would say it's still really important to show that, even if you are bringing the money in. Never go back to just doing financial KPIs. Always show that this is a work in progress and this is a constant evolution and you're moving through people. Yeah. I think internally to you yourselves, definitely number of meetings, as I've said. And I think, you know, even if you're a team of one, having your own KPI that you hold dear. Am I having enough meetings? Am I touching base with everyone on my portfolio at least once a month? Am I having, and it's not necessarily meetings, I would say meaningful touch point. And that's a horribly jargony phrase, but you could have the thing that's in the paper that you snip out that you post to them. It could be the birthday card, the anniversary card, the sorry we heard you were poorly, get well soon card. That isn't a meeting, but it is a meaningful touch point in terms of, you know, that it's going to be well received and that kind of thing. The other thing I would say is whatever you choose, don't choose too many. I would say half a dozen max, right? You don't want to spend half your life reporting and measuring and doing all the rest of it. You know, don't do too much at all. And I guess, what do you do if you're not making progress or you're stuck in that cultivation phase? And are you, another useful KPI, but potentially controversial? Hello to the chief exec in the audience. What are the KPIs you're measuring them on? This is a team effort, right, Sue?
Yeah.
You know, so you need them to be doing meetings, you need them to be feeding back, you know. So what have they committed to and are they hitting it? So one KPI is, are you doing your share, whatever that looks like, however you measure that, whatever they've committed to. So you've got 2 trustees who've said that they'll help with 4 people, but over a 3-month view, the trustee KPI still looks like 0. That's a really strong headline for them that they're not doing their share.
Yeah.
So I would always include someone else's KPI that's impacting on your team. I think major gifts is one of those things that it's really, really important that we recognize that it's a team effort as well.
Yeah.
If you kind of feel you're stuck in that cultivation phase, this might not be a KPI, but if you and your team feel you're stuck and you're kind of not moving forward, I would advocate that you undertake some really, not brutal, but direct with each other, and your team member does it to you and you do it to them. So this isn't a management thing, this is just a holding each other to account thing. Pipeline review. So you literally go through your pipeline person by person. When was the last time you made contact? What was the response? What is your next desired piece of information you are trying to find out? What is your plan to find it out? When are you going to do it? And that kind of stuff, and really holding each other to account. And it's where, if you're the sole fundraiser, major donor fundraiser in an organization and no one gets it, but also as a manager, Sue, it can be really tricky, because you do need someone who knows what they're talking about to have that chat with, to kind of go, yes, I know, I need to move this forward, I need to prioritize that. You're absolutely right. Because if you don't do it, it's really easy for like 3 months to fly by and suddenly you haven't been in touch because you're so busy doing everything else.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. So I would definitely recommend pipeline review. And it might well be, while you're going through that, you identify some recurring problems. And again, for that internal team KPI, it might be worth short term really noting that and going, okay, we need to address this problem. What is the measure we can put in place? Because what gets measured gets counted, right? So we've noticed that we leave it too long between meetings. We look like on our current KPIs we're hitting our meeting target, but we're not really. So what can we put in place? Do we measure distance between meetings, which is a bit of more of a pain in the neck to measure, but do we say that we give ourselves a 30-day cap, a 60-day cap between those things, and then over time you measure that and you try and bring that down? So I think also KPIs aren't necessarily things you set at the beginning of the year and you measure for the whole year. Where they're at their most useful is where they're helping you to stay on track or change behavior if you've got off track.
Yeah. That's super helpful. Thank you, Beth. Really
welcome.
So,
and you know, if anyone else has got KPIs that they find really working, especially those ones where they're pushing upwards and outwards and really helping demonstrate difference to their SMT and their trustees, do jot it down in the chat so that we can all learn from it. We'd love to. Thank you. Who is next? Anyone else got a question they want to ask? Hello, Michael. Really nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. And I just got the thing through this morning saying you were doing this session, and I thought, oh, I've got to come along. But I'm stuck, and I thought actually this would be great to get some views. And I think it's because I'm feeling uncreative. But if I tell you a story of an individual that I've been working with, and why I'm stuck. So I met her maybe last year, and she owns her own business. She's super driven. She's super enthusiastic about what we do and everything else. And she, on our initial in-person meeting, said, I'm going to organize for you a big glitzy event in London. I've got lots of London contacts. I know this person, this person, this person. I'm super excited. I can't wait to get going on it. It's going to be this. You don't have to do it, because I'm like, oh my God, a London event. You don't have to do anything. I'm going to do it all, and I'm going to go for it. And I'm like, fantastic. That sounds really exciting. And then I met her last week after she's been away living abroad for half the year, because she does that. And she is not the same person, to the degree that it was like meeting another person. She's very relaxed. She's very chill. She's quite calm. She likes what we do. She wants to support, but she's not going to organize anything. She's stepping away from her business. I don't know what's gone on, because she didn't reveal it, but it's just like, honestly, I have met two completely different people. I said, I'd love to help. I'm really keen to do something, but obviously not what I was, that's not where I am. But do let me know. And I'm like, magic. I don't know. I haven't got a clue. Because it was such a out of nowhere. She's so different.
Wow.
She looks different. I mean, I look different too, but she looks different. She sounds different. She talks different. She's got different words that she uses. She's yeah. It just blindsided me, and now I
I'm
don't
not
know.
surprised. Blindsided me as well. So your previous interaction with her, was that your first one?
We talked on phone once or twice, and we'd email back and forwards. And she was called to the organization, but she's very into her own pets, and she really gets about helping people that can't afford it. She was totally on board. And then this time when we met, was taking her to see one of our locations, so she could see behind the scenes, and she was super excited and so on. She really enjoyed being there.
Yeah.
But she's just a different person. And she's like, let me know what I can do. And I was like,
Well, let her know
Bro.
what she can do that doesn't involve doing anything.
doing that big glitzy thing.
Doing a big thing.
And I'm like, so I'm trying to think about it, and I just haven't really got anywhere in the last few days. And I thought maybe you guys have got some thoughts, or maybe I just needed to get it out.
I mean, obviously, you're always welcome to just get it out and have a bit of therapy session, because there's not so queer as folk, is there? Let's be honest. Like, that's the great thing, and the really big thing that keeps us on our toes, right? Is people just change.
Yeah. I mean, people have different thoughts and whatever, but I've never seen such a big change in one person in what, a year?
I mean, maybe something's happened that if you were privy to it, you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously that's a really good lesson for all of us, in that, we will never really know what's going on for those people. We won't ever be in their inner sanctum unless they choose to share it with us, right? So that stuff could happen. So obviously the big do it herself third party event is off the table. But when she says, what can she do you think it's worth exploring other stuff to do, and you want ideas of what she could do? Or do you think it's worth just going back and going, actually what we need is some cold hard cash, could you give us a check? With more finesse than that.
She's kind of all right for blunt stuff too sometimes. I don't know, and I guess because I was thrown, I've just been, every time I sit down and think about it, I just swirl.
Yeah. So is she London based half the year?
No, she's not. She spends a lot of time in London. I think more so now, because she's kind of, I would say she's kind of semi-retiring.
Yeah.
Almost, from her business. She's delegated it all. Again, she used to be like super detailed, in on everything. I met her at her place, and we walked around. She was all about the details, and now she's quite hands-offy. It's just weird. So yeah, and I don't know if because she's hands off, and I don't know if she's trying to make more time to live and do her own thing rather than be a business owner, or what. And therefore I'm like, do I ask her is asking for her time the wrong way to go about it?
So the point at which a person changes speed work-wise, it can be a really lucrative moment for a major donor fundraiser because they free up their time and they free up their money. So particularly if this, I don't know what she does, whether it's her own business or what, but you know, this could be a prelude to sale, and then she'd have a windfall. So it's worth thinking about the fact that that is really important. Where she's based, where you think she's going to be based in the UK, if it's not London because it's not work, have you got a centre nearby that she could focus a gift on? What's your kind of,
We
or are you
do. So
trying to
she's in Scotland. She spent a fair bit of time in London, and she spent the last 6 months in Dubai. But we do have things not too far from her geographically. I mean, I suppose my first challenge there is we're not planning to do much beyond our normal day to day there. Across Scotland, it's going to be day to day for the next 3 years. If we can just survive doing our normals, there's no plans to do anything new.
But again, you are a rescue charity, and like the hospice, you're never going to be able to close, and you're never going to look at your cure. So you're always going to need day to day, keeping the lights on funding. I would be tempted to go back to her and say, you've been really thinking about her offer of what can she do, and you'd like to explore some options, and go ready with a cash ask that is keeping the lights on locally in Scotland. Or whilst you recognise she's no longer in the right place to do the big event, did she have in mind something that was around fundraising, and could she therefore give you some steer on that? If a gift isn't the right thing, could she give you some better steer on that so that you could come away with a really suitable proposal? You don't want to waste her time getting it wrong, but you just wanted to explore, does that mean cash or does that mean doing? And if it means doing, what does that mean?
Okay.
Just kind of go back and try to find out more.
Just thank you. Thank you. I just want to go back in a hurry, and at the same time, I'm just like,
yeah, no, I totally get it.
I'm almost speechless as well. And
has she given before?
No, this was going to be her first real gift. So she's kind of new to us as well. She's kind of new to us as well. So it's all kind of like, I can't even go, well, you gave us X last a couple of years ago, let's do more. And it was very much, she didn't want to give money herself. She wanted to do a thing to bring in others and stuff. It's such a shift.
So having just given a big chat on how you can't do donor circles because they're a really bad idea, what about a donor circle, Michael?
No, I came to the call and I joined a little bit late because I was in a meeting, and I heard you saying donor circles are black, and I'm just like, oh well, I'm not going to do one of those.
So, but right. So someone who doesn't want to put their hand in their pocket, but is probably well connected, you've identified them as a potential major donor, has come back and said she doesn't, for whatever reason, want to organise a whole big thing. And let's be honest, any of us who've organised a whole big thing, we're all with her, right? None of us want to do that for a job either. Is there a donor circle option where she's got like-minded people she could bring in on a gift basis that's much more light touch than an event?
I like that. Okay. That's given.
So sorry, but also for the benefit of the larger group, I have just given very vehement advice that donor circles are terrible unless they work for your donor. But this is an example of where it might work for a donor, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't something that the organisation has got that he's having to strong arm people into, Michael. But if she wants to do a thing to raise money, but she doesn't want to run an event, what are the things that we can do to raise money that aren't events? When major donors probably giving circles, and something, you know, if her friends are based in Scotland, something around being the underpinning for one of the centres would be a really cool giving circle. Like, we are the people who underwrite the costs for this centre would be kind of a cool message.
That's really good.
And I can see it would work for you guys internally. Sorry, there's a lot of advantage here because I know the organisations of most of the people I'm talking to. You know, that would work for you guys internally because it's broadly core funding. It's the crap that no one wants to fund. You'd get quite a lot of brownie points for that, wouldn't you? Well,
I would a little bit. I get a couple of brownie points. Well, I wouldn't
you'd get a bit
for doing the opposite.
But no, it would also take the pressure off you. If you got a major gift towards something that was pretty mundane, it would take the pressure off you.
If I've only got a limited number of things, I can put a new gift towards new things, then putting
exactly.
That's brilliant. That's got me instead of sitting here going, telling what hair I've got left, which is very little out, I now have a plan or an idea of where to go.
I'm really pleased. I'm really
100%
pleased.
Beth. Thank you.
You are welcome. Does anyone else want to chew over the cud of a specific donor problem? You're more than welcome to. Or if you've got a more general question, Joe, hi, how can I help you?
Right, hi. It's
Hi.
been so useful. So thank you so much. I had a couple of questions, and so tell
Go
me if
for
I
it.
can't get them all answered. I signed in a bit late, and you were having a really interesting chat with the team at Havens, and you mentioned about automation. And I was just really interested to hear about examples of automation in major donor kind of like setup or kind of like communication, especially as I am a 3-day-a-week role, which is brilliant because I'm in Sue's team. So this has been really helpful. But how I use my time most efficiently, and using kind of like Microsoft tools. But I did have a question as well as to whether anyone uses TIN and the percent portal, and have they found it useful, and what they do after 1 year, because I've kind of found out about it and wonder whether it's something we need to, could be useful to invest in.
Okay. So automations. Where do you work, Joe? Who do you work for?
So I work for Eleanor.
Oh,
with
lovely.
Sue. Yeah.
Good Sue. So the piece I was talking about automations was about harnessing the automations that your individual giving team already use. That's what I was saying.
Right.
That's
Okay.
the most efficient way to save your time as a big gift fundraiser. So what they are doing is they are sending out regular communications, some with asks and some without asks, to all the people on their database. What I imagine you have done, because this is what all charities do, is you have removed your donors from their lists. So your donors are not getting anything unless you send it to them. Now, that is really sensible because you don't want to accidentally get them on a £5 a month direct debit. You don't want them to getting the Christmas appeal asking for 20 quid. Totally get why you do it. But in terms of regular communication, you could harness using your individual giving team for newsletters. You could get them on a newsletter mailing so that you know what they're getting. I am a big advocate of big gift fundraisers spending a bit of time with IG fundraisers to understand the mechanics of what they do, and then thinking about how you can slot your donors into what they're already doing. So you're not adding to their workload for money that isn't going to come to them, but you're also saving your time where at all possible. So, I mean, the hard truth is, Joe, that with big gifts, there isn't very much else you can automate. So your database should be able to help you with reminders for key dates. That's the only other thing I can think of where a database can be useful. So making sure that you're getting reminders in enough time so that you can have stuff that you're not having to commit to memory the whole time. So I think those are where CRM systems come into their own, is where they're doing basics for you and where they're reminding you of everything else, so that your brain is as free as possible to hold the important relationship stuff. It isn't, oh my God, I must remember to do this, I must remember to do this, I must remember to do this, which takes up a disproportionate amount of our processing capacity. And if there is just newsletters that's going out on a regular basis, that you can use that. The other thing that your IG team will do really well is write brilliantly compelling copy. So whether they are using it to ask for £5 or they're asking for it as a one-off gift or whatever, you could do much worse than reuse the copy they've already written. Obviously not sending it in an email with an ask, but you could use that copy as part of a letter. You could take the compelling copy with the case studies, with the examples, with the stories that they've already used, and you could convert that so that you're not writing your copy from scratch either.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Now, and what was the other thing you said?
It's percent. So you get a discounted Sales Navigator subscription for a year.
I don't know about this percent, but I do know about Sales Navigator in LinkedIn. I have used LinkedIn really successfully without paying for Sales Navigator, but it is a slower process. I think, so for those of you who are unfamiliar, Sales Navigator is one of the kind of premium LinkedIn options. It's definitely not cheap. Any of the premium LinkedIn options are not cheap. And it is for people who are trying to make sales. That's the whole point of it. It's for salespeople to try and approach the right folks who they can then flog their widgets and their photocopiers and whatever to. So what we're doing, and And I would challenge how much that works. So we've all had those dreadful approaches on LinkedIn, haven't we? And emails probably, where I must have a response to my recent email about your SEO and all the rest of it. I'm like, no, you mustn't. Like, literally, you just emailed me cold, and I'm surprised because I marked that one as spam. How have you got through again? You know, that's my approach to it. And so I would sort of argue that maybe that hardcore sales thing doesn't work. But I am a huge advocate of using LinkedIn, that said. So I think LinkedIn is about just building your network over time and spending the time. So one of the things I do if I'm stuck nursing my poorly child, or certainly not so much now, he's a bit older, but when he was a bit younger and I felt like I spent every other day nursing him because he was poorly and felt very frustrated I couldn't do my job very well, one of the things I did on my phone was I'd get LinkedIn open and behind his back and go through and search for job titles and connect with people. And you can do that as fundraisers as well. You know the exact individuals you're trying to connect with. You then know the companies they work for. So you're looking for company connections. You might have a geographic area you're looking for. So you're looking to connect with people in a geographic area. And for free, you can use LinkedIn quite well to search for all those different criteria and find people and connect with them. And then the magic of LinkedIn, in my opinion, will start to happen when you become an expert in your cause to them. So what they are looking for, they are not looking to connect with a fundraiser ever. They are looking for where they can spend their charitable giving, if that's what they're on LinkedIn for, at an organization that they can trust, that resonates with them, that they think is brilliant, right? So from a LinkedIn connections point of view, what you are doing is being one of the faces of your organization, demonstrating your expertise, demonstrating your impact. So you should have, and if resources allowed, your social media manager could do this. And if not, you'll have to do it yourself. But you should have as much content going out on your LinkedIn profile directly about your cause and its impact and the stories as your company, as your organization's social media has. So probably Eleanor has great content going out about the families it supports and the difference it makes. But are you doing that directly? And I don't mean just forwarding or sharing what Eleanor's page is doing. I'm saying you directly. So you directly are building expertise, knowledge, and you're building your reputation as the person who should be looked at. And you need to do that quite prolifically. You probably need to be posting on LinkedIn every day about something, because the LinkedIn algorithm is a bit rubs and you need to be visible. So you need to be connecting with the right people. And once you're connecting with them, you need to be building this body of expertise with them. You can then message people once you're connected with them and ask if you can meet with them and all the rest of it. But I wouldn't be doing that through a sales navigator thing. I wouldn't be doing that with anyone who hadn't agreed to connect with me as a first person connection. And I have had it work over the years. I had a friend of a friend who could connect me with the guy who's the managing director of Wonderbra when I was working for Copperfield many years ago. And I managed to get a message to him. He agreed to connect with me on LinkedIn. I then invited him to an event. We were lucky enough to have a garden, a Copperfield garden at Hampton Court that year. I invited him to that. He never RSVP'd, but he turned up and he and his wife were there. And I was able to pitch that, you know, Wonderbra should have health messaging, and Copperfield was the right place to learn what that health messaging was because we worked with the exact same demographic. And he became a huge advocate. And not only did Wonderbra become an early adopter of the Copperfield in-bra messaging, but using his connections to the whole industry, he got us in front of very.co about a month later and advocated that the whole industry should be having health messaging in its bras. And he also worked for, I think it was Shock Absorber or someone else, and they did a breast cancer awareness month with a pink bra, and you know, it was amazing. So it definitely does work. But I'm not an advocate of paying for those connections because I think it makes them a bit too transactional, and you need emotional connections. But I also accept that if you haven't, I'm really lucky. I'm just looking at my LinkedIn profile now. I've got thousands of connections, and I've spent years and years and years doing it. And I do recognize if you're relatively new to LinkedIn, that could feel quite overwhelming. Yeah, so I've got nearly 4,000 connections. But you know, I just go out and spend the time and just be connect with anyone you can who you feel is remotely relevant. you guys who've got the local charities, locally based organisations, definitely connecting with anyone who's a deputy lieutenant. In Kent, you've also got your Kent ambassadors, getting Kent Life, going through the back pages. And that's for, sorry, I live in Kent for anyone who doesn't know, so it's a bit easier for me to use this as a reference point, but this is true for whatever your county is. Get Dorset Life, get Devon Life, get Northumberland Life. Look in those back pages, and there's the great and the good roll out in those pictures, the same faces now as were there when I started doing that in 2007. I can assure you, you know, connect with the people at your community foundation, because they're connected with those high net worth individuals. So thinking strategically about who can you connect with, because as soon as you've connected with them, then their network is only 1 degree away from you, and then it's easier. So are there trusts and foundations that are based in your county? I know you're not a trust fundraiser, and you can look up the trustees of those on the Charity Commission, connect with them, because they are hanging out with other philanthropists, I can assure you, and they're connected to the community foundations as well. And then suddenly the names that are on your cold list or have come through from Prospecting for Gold or wherever, they're only 1 step away, and it's a bit easier. And you know, as the generations progress, it is getting easier to connect with people on LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, thank you. That's been so helpful. And what I find useful in Kent as well is we have things like the Mega Growth 50. So, and then identifying the kind of the companies on there, and they might already be in your, like on your radar or helpful for corporate. I think what is maybe a bit challenging for me is when you have like a couple of hats. So I've got my Eleanor hat. Previously I had a like champion in Kent kind of hat in my role, and I'm still doing it. And I've got co-working. So like, and making sure I'm consistent in kind of like Eleanor, because that's my main role, but then also kind of the other small bit of things I'm doing outside work and not confusing people. But often there is a bit of a crossover.
Yeah, I can totally see that, Jo, but you are a single homogenous human, and you are entitled to have more than 1 string to your bow. And I found that I made the greatest inroads with my donors when I admitted to having stuff going on outside of work, because they're more than just donors. They are business owners, their parents, their grandparents, their pet owners, their things, and relationships have to be 2-way. So not in a way that feels intrusive or that you're giving away anything more than you're comfortable with, but in terms of work and LinkedIn, it's already there. It's quite a nice way to offer people an inroad and an insight into who you are if you're doing something other than this.
Okay, great, thank you.
We have got 6 more minutes till I need to go. So if anyone's got one last question or anything else, please do put your hands up, chat in the comments. Hi, Ros, go ahead. Ross.
Hi, thanks,
yes.
Beth. This has been really helpful. I just feel like I need to apologise to everyone who's got a chief exec who's ever asked you if you know Bill Gates, or if you want to get a new patron or something. Just really quickly, we don't have many major donors. Our fundraising team is kind of 2 part-timers, but we do have some amazing sort of significant donors. Fundraisers who've worked with us who've had experience in this world have often commented that our major donors are a bit different to the ones they're used to working with. So our core focus is people who've had their asylum claims refused, so it may be not the most attractive area of work, and just people that, like you said, don't want to come to the glitzy dinners, don't want to be open about their work, but are happy to give significant amounts, buy a house for us to use, things like that. And just wondered if you had any super quick top tips for like being in a sort of non-attractive cause maybe, and donors who really don't like the glitz and glamour.
I mean, I think take advantage of donors who don't like glitz and glamour and just do the straightforward asking for gift stuff, because the glitz and the glamour has a much lower ROI and it can be really stressful, and it really doesn't bring in the money generally. You know, if you've got a load of donors who are habituated to doing that stuff, then you're probably stuck in it. But otherwise, you know, there are far better ways to raise your money. I've worked a bit with a couple of refugee charities, not so much your end of the asylum claims being rejected. And there is just a kind of a steady plod of getting it done. And also people with sympathy towards your type of cause tend to, not always and not exclusively, but tend to hang out with other people who have sympathy towards your cause. And so finding a way that you can encourage them to bring others in. So whilst it's not glitz and glamour, the types of events that I've seen work are ones that are really hardcore, taking the lid off, seeing behind the scenes of what is life like. We did an immersive event years ago now for Disasters Emergency Committee. So I'm sure you will know them. They decide if they're going to launch an appeal based on lots of criteria. They're a member organisation of all the different international development rescue type charities across the UK. Each of those is represented on the board with some other people. There are specific criteria, and then they launch a TV campaign and a radio campaign, and they get on the phones and they have corporates and all the rest of it. And it's all overseas, right? It's tsunamis and wars and things that can feel very disconnected. And there was a lull for a brief period where they weren't in appeal, which I don't think is going to happen again soon, sadly. And we were looking at how we could cultivate a better major giving pool with a really specific ask of, would you be on this list that we could call before we go public, so that we could get some instant funding. So it was a really interesting ask in that respect. And we did it through an immersive event. So it was an immersive theatre. We used a dodgy old warehouse, so it didn't look too nice. And the donors were all taken through. They were timed entry in groups of 12, I think it was. And we took them in. The first room was some real trustees play acting, something happening, making the decision, calling it. And then it went through to the fundraising room, because that's the really important message for what they do. And then there was some stuff around deployment of resources. And we got people to decide, you only have this much money. Do you have really big impact now, but it has some medium-term implications? Do you have less of an impact now, but you solve those implications? And we have this fixed amount of money right now. What the hell, make them make those hard decisions. So they were really entrenched in it. And then the final room was, I think we were basing it on the Philippines. And so the final room was a Filipino market, and all of the drinks and stuff that you'd expect at one of those events, they had to buy from a different storeholder. And each of the storeholders was either a person from the Philippines who worked for one of the charities, or someone from the charity. And so they had these little conversations over getting their canapes, over getting their glass of, guava juice or whatever it was. And then the chief exec stood up and spoke. So you can do events that are really meaningful without them being glitzy and glamorous. And maybe one of the asks you could ask of your donors would be, would they be interested in, if we put on something like that, that really opened out to a new audience what we do, the difference we make, and why it's essential we exist? Would that work for you? I mean, obviously, it's really important you do it with dignity of the people who've had their asylum claims turned down. I was reading something recently where someone was saying we need to stop these prison breakouts and things for charities. And I suddenly thought, you're really right. We're not really giving people in prison much dignity. I worked at Battersea once, and we had our major donors sleep in one of our Victorian kennels. I feel like the dogs didn't give a crap if we didn't dignify them. They were quite happy that we were getting new kennels. And that was the closest we could come to giving people a sense of how miserable it was. It was stinky and damp, and there were trains running overhead, and the dogs were literally going insane having to stay in these kennels, and we really needed to build new kennels. But how do you get that across in a pretty wealthy part of London? There's loads. It was just as all the building works was happening in Nine Elms. Can't we just ask the contractors to build us new kennels? I'm like, oh yeah, we hadn't thought of that. Thanks. And oddly enough, they've said no. So there's lots of stuff going on, but we got people to stay over in a kennels, and they recognise how bloody uncomfortable and horrible it was. And they're already pet owners, they're already minded to it. So you need to do it with dignity, and I'm sure you would, being the charity that you are, but I should just point out to everybody you should do it with dignity. So you could opt for something like that would help get them to bring more donors in, because that could help lift your income. You are welcome. I am going to have to say goodbye. I hope this has been really useful for you guys. I've got some more of these planned going into September, and then we might have to take a pause after that for a bit. But, keep an eye out, and this will be posted on the Facebook group once it's been edited. So you can always look back if you missed some questions, and hopefully see you all again soon. But thank you for your time, everyone. Really enjoyed it. Bye for now.